Stop the cap.
Don't forget to pick up my new book. It's on Amazon. The link is in the description box.
I feel like white people are Christian because they want to protect themselves from the evil of themselves. I was just watching a clip of Sean Ryan, and he was sitting there with Tucker Carlson talking about how he puts the foundation of, I don't know, I guess the houses he builds. You know, he'll put crosses in the cement as they pour cement, and they'll put Bibles in the four corners of the house. And, you know, all this real spooky, superstitious Christianity. And what I've noticed, or what it seemed like online, you know, like, I don't know if anybody else has noticed this. And maybe it's just because the due to social media, but it seems like the more openly white supremacist America becomes, like vocally, and we've seen this really ever since, you know, Charlottesville. Every time Trump gets in office, the white supremacists, they all get emboldened, right? You know, we're going to take the country back. We're going to make America great again. All this shit, right? And then you got the what's that pastor's name? Wobin or Wobbin or whatever his name is. The one that runs around talking about how, you know, black people can't be pastors. And then recently he went on a rant about Vivek Ramaswamy and how he worships cows and you know, just all this white Christian nationalist bullshit, right? And it's just, I don't know, it's just amazing to me how these people do not look in the mirror. You know, and I've already said this before about Christianity. I already picked up on this. I talked about this in Understanding White Supremacy, how, you know, like black people look at Christianity, they look at Jesus suffering, and they identify with Jesus suffering, right? But white people, they make the claim. The only time they identify with Jesus' suffering is when they want to, you know, make the argument that Christians are being persecuted, right? Which is not the reality. The Christians have been persecuting pretty much everybody else, not the other way around. You know, the Western, the civilization, the military industrial complex, like that's all run by Christians. Bombing other countries into oblivion, evading other countries. It's all by Christians. And so for like Christians to run around and act like Christendom, you know, has been militarily losing, you know, against the rest of the world is just nonsensical. But again, this goes to, you know, the pathological nature of white people, you know, and going back to Michael Bradley's Iceman Inheritance and white people and their Cronus complex. They're very weird, peculiar people. I have to say, like, when you just sit down and you examine and you're like all you're left with is the idea that these people are actually literally insane. They're literally insane. Now, Christopher Grandison will say, you know, well, it's a part of evolutionary psychology, you know, like, you know, the whole thing about, you know, winning as a group or a racial group and the tribalism that exists in the world. It's not about being morally consistent, righteous, or just. It's just about winning. Right. So, you know, you go in there and, you know, you're trying to build up your civilization. You want free labor. You go in and you come up with all type of justification as to why it's okay for you to enslave another group of people. You know, it's wrong. Deep down inside, you know, it's wrong. But you're going to try to come up with justification to make it sound like, you know, it's right. Oh, well, you know, well, they're not really human beings. They're not really people, you know, well, you know, and we're civilizing them and they don't know how to act and they wouldn't survive in Africa if it wasn't for, you know, you start making up all type of bullshit in order for you to justify what the fuck you're doing. It's like a rapist trying to justify, you know, them engaging in the rape. You know, oh, well, I mean, she really wanted it because, you know, she was wearing a skirt and she had her legs exposed. And, you know, if she really didn't want me to rape her, then she wouldn't have wore that outfit. Like, that's white people in a nutshell. That's how many of them think. You know, and what's so sickening is like, I don't see this space of like good white people, because they all seem to think this way to a varying degree, right? There's mileage may vary. Some are more extreme than others, but generally, they all seem to have this sort of, collective mindset. Even the liberal ones, even the ones that are like, oh, I'm an ally, I'm for black people. No, they're not. Again, it goes back to that the movies I was talking about in another video, Enemy Mine, Fern Gully and the Last Rainforest, Last Samurai, Avatar, what's another movie? There's another movie in there. There's another movie I'm missing. Dances with Wolves, right? These are movies with white people. They come in, they're the oppressor. They know that they're the oppressor. They come in as the oppressor. You know what I'm saying? Sully in Avatar came in as the oppressor. They came there to mine, the planet. Okay? It was a moon. To mine the moon. Okay? They go in, they switch sides, right? Become friends with the Native Americans. You have the archaeologists that are trying to like understand like the people and the culture, the anthropologists, whatever you want to call them, right? And then you had the corporation that comes in, right? Like white people know how their own shit functions. They know how their own imperialist system functions. Like the number one thing that white people have over arguably every other group, or at least, for the last 500 years, they've had it better than every other group, right? Because they were the first ones to go out and initiate it, is logistics. White people know logistics. Okay, they know how to go in and they had to, because again, they got a shitty spawn. While black people and many other people were growing up in the Garden of Eden, right? And the resources are abundant, the temperature is temperate, or tropical and warm. You know what I mean? So you can walk around with no shirt on, butt ass naked, and you ain't really got to worry about shit. Okay? But white people, on the other hand, they got to worry about winters, long winters. They got to worry about blizzards and shit. They got to worry about crops failing, right? They got to worry about, invading hordes of other groups, right? Other groups of white people, right? That's why Europe has forts and castles everywhere, right? Because after the collapse of Rome, Northern and Western Europe just went into chaos. It's nothing but all they did was war. All they did for centuries, all they did was war. War, 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 war. They're the fucking Klingons, the Viltrumites, of planet Earth. They're the Sith Lords of planet Earth. This is what they do. They have perfected it. Okay? And then once, they had the Berlin Conference and decided, oh, look, after, several hundred years of the age of exploration, they were like, hey, why are we fighting each other? Why don't we cooperate more? Okay? And then they came up with the idea and the concept of whiteness, which they never had any before. Whiteness, only came up in like the 15th century, 15th, 16th century. It didn't exist before. But they came up with that concept. We're white and everybody else is something else and they're less than. And then you got all the, the phrenology and, all the ideas of race that came up in the 17 and 1800s, using it to justify all of the crimes against humanity that they committed, right? Meanwhile, still telling themselves that Jesus loves them. Meanwhile, still running around and acting like they're the torchbearers and harbingers of Jesus Christ and the word of the gospel. It's disgusting. It always kills me, like whenever you talk to some of these Christians and they're foaming at the mouth about the Muslims and everything. I'm like, nigga, you do the same thing. You literally go around the world and you're worse than the Muslims. Okay, the Muslims didn't go out there and genocide a whole people. They got people to convert. I'm not saying that they didn't commit violence. They'll try to tell you that they didn't. They'll be like, no, we converted Pakistan through love and peace. No, you didn't. You know what I'm saying? Muhammad bin al-Qasim, right, went out there with battle formations and shit. Right? I think that's his name. right? He went out there with battle formations. So no, you fought people. You can go and you can find the history of the Pakistanis and them fighting the Muslims when they came in there. Nobody drops their culture or their religion or their identity or any of that shit, just because somebody shows up and they say, hey, we got a better way. Nobody does that. So, it's like, white people try to pretend like that's not what they know. They go and you eradicate an entire group of people. You use Christianity as a way to get in the door, convert the king, get him to be Christian, right? And then get his people to be Christian so that they're more docile, right? All that turn other cheek bullshit. And then you go in there and then you pillage them of their resources so that you can build up your Western civilization and then run around and then brag about how awesome Europe is and how Europe has this awesome infrastructure. Like it was always that, when it wasn't. It was shit. It was dusty. It was plague infested. It was a backwater of the world. None of the fucking awesome megalithic structures are in ancient Europe. There's nothing there. These people are the new kids on the block. The ancient world is in Africa. The ancient world is in South America. The ancient world is in freaking the Middle East and in Asia and in India. Right? When you see these awesome megalithic structures and you go, oh my God, how did they build these structures? None of those structures involve white people. And I think that's one of the reasons why white people run around. They have this psychological insecurity. You know what I mean? You're talking about a people that are only fucking, 50,000 to 45,000 years old. Blue eyes didn't even come into existence until about 8,000 to 6,000 years old. Pale skin is only about 6,000 to 8,000 years old. What we consider white skin. This is why they always kill me when people want to go back in time. I see some people that are upset about, what's his name? Ben running around talking about, the guy that always talks about Egypt with the ponytail, talking about, he wants to go back to the time of Zet Tepi. I'm like, hey, keep going back. Because the further you go back, the less non-black people there are on the planet. You keep going back and back and back, and you're only going to get blacker and darker and blacker and darker. You want to say, oh, it's not the pre-dynastic Egyptians. Oh, it was the period before. Okay, go back even further. It ain't nothing but black people when you go back even further. It don't matter to me. There ain't no sweat off my back. So there's a bit of jealousy there. This is why they try to subscribe to this naked, white version of Christianity, of white Eve and white Adam, in the Garden of Eden. And then, Eve eats the apple and gives it to Adam and all that shit. And then they get kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And then like two white people get together and then procreate and then make all the rest of the world, which makes absolutely no fucking sense. Makes absolutely no fucking sense. And again, then we have the freaking DNA evidence and the out of Africa, theory that totally contradicts that. And not just the DNA evidence, but all the archaeological evidence. Even the Chinese came over to Africa and they were like, oh, we wanted to see and claim that the Chinese had a unique evolutionary origin. And then they come to find out, all the DNA goes back to Africa. The oldest Chinese bones that we find go back to Africa. You can't escape it. You see? And see, when you're trying to create a racial hierarchy and then you work backwards and you try to create the concepts that reinforce what you want to believe about yourself, and you do it retroactively, you know what I mean? And then it doesn't fit. See, that fucks with you. That fucks with you. Messes up your story. Right? So then you got to try to come up with some other argument. But these folks are weird. Like it's like I used to, when I was less pro-black, and I used to hear like the black militant and the black Muslims and stuff. They used to be like, the white man is the devil. You know what I mean? I used to be like, man, that's a pretty extreme statement. The white man is the devil. They used to say that shit all the damn time. And it's like, here you got, right? You think of like movies with vampires and shit, and and people will put crosses on their door and garlic and hold the Bible and whatnot to try to keep the devil out of their house, right? Try to keep Satan out of their house, right? And yet the weird thing is when you really look at white people in the context of their history, when you really look at it, and you really look at the crimes against humanity, which they still refuse to take accountability for, as we saw with all the white nations when it comes to, acknowledging slavery as the gravest crime against humanity, right? Which will ultimately lead to the next argument is reparations, right? But see, they're not going to pay that. But I'm saying it's so weird to me that way that white people think that they bring justice and righteousness and goodness to the world. And then they'll sit there and I'm going to put a Bible in four corners of my house as though they're protecting themselves from evil when they're the evil themselves. Like imagine a vampire or Satan putting Bibles in the four corners of their house to protect themselves from evil outside the house. Like, nigga, you the evil. It's like having the monster in your closet, the boogeyman, that's more scared of you than you should be of the boogeyman. When the boogeyman is the one that's committing all the violence. It's like Jason in a movie. Like as soon as you see Jason turns around and then screams and then runs away from you. And it's like, nigga, you're Jason. You know what I'm saying? It's like freaking Freddy Krueger shows up and shit and then sees you and then starts screaming and running away from you. Nigga, you Freddy Krueger. The fuck? What you running away from me for? You the one that's killing people in their dreams and shit. You the one that got the reputation of that, not me. I'm like, this is insane. This is insane. Like the sort of like reverse psychology play, that they engage in. It's in fucking sane. Just to sit there and they really believe themselves. And that goes to that whole hierarchy thing, right? The whole that God is the supreme authority and Christ is king and we're Christians and we're warriors for Christ. They're literally on some 40K shit, with the fucking emperor and shit. Like that's literally what they're on. Okay, so they think of themselves as the space marines. So they can go out into the world and commit atrocities and do fucked up shit to anybody. Same way that the Jewish people think. That they can go out there, commit atrocities against anybody because God is on their side. So here you have a bunch of people who engage in savagery and crimes against humanity who then hide behind God, which again, like even the story, the Abrahamic story, they didn't even come out of Europe. But then they took them and hijacked them and twisted them and then manipulated them and then try to use them as cover for their crimes against humanity. Because Christ is king. And if you're not Christian, then anything I do to you is in the name of Christ. I'm telling you, these people are disgusting with the way that they think, operate, and move. And they don't even see their own disgustingness. They don't see it. They do not see it. They think of themselves as somehow, righteous and morally just, right? And they always kill me where you get like the people they'll try to equalize, like what they're currently doing to help, like I don't know, like a small group of people, to like their whole history of crimes against humanity. Or my favorite is when the things that they have done are causing the problems that currently exist. And they go in there and they try to put a Band-Aid on a hemorrhaging wound and then act like the good deed that they're doing isn't something that they as a group caused, right? It's like if you cause, you have neocolonialism, you make it to where an African country only exports non-consumable products like coffee beans and cocoa and shit like that. So they're not growing their own crops to feed themselves. Then, I don't know, something happens. There's a famine, there's a drought or something. The monsoons didn't move far enough south. So now they're starving because there's a famine, because the monsoons didn't, like, bring down the rain like it should have. Right. So because on top of that, they weren't growing their own as much food as they should have, so they didn't have stores. Then there's a humanitarian crisis, and then you end up having like the UN or somebody come in and be like, "Oh, poor little Africans. Oh, let us give you some rice. Oh, let us import your food because you can't feed yourselves, because, it's only reinforces what we've always said about you, because you all are just incapable." How the fuck are they incapable of feeding themselves when you came to a continent and took 10 million people from the fucking continent? There wasn't a shortage of people before you fucking showed up. But then you set up all these elaborate fucking systems and shit to make it to where, the Africans can't support themselves. And then when they go through a famine or something like that, you're like, see, if it wasn't for us, if it wasn't for the benevolence of the European, if it wasn't for the benevolence of the Caucasian, these Africans wouldn't be able to survive. That's why they should be thanking us for stealing their resources. That's why they should be thanking us for exploiting their land. Because if we weren't here, they would just be dying of starvation and disease. These people are sick. They're sick. And it's insane to me to sit there and watch a vampire put fucking, Bibles in the corner of their fucking house. And not recognize who and what the fuck they are. Parasitic in nature. They don't build anything for themselves. This is why Europe is dying. Because Europe built and developed itself off of consuming a disproportionate amount of the rest of the world's resources. And now that essentially colonialism has come to an end, because now, see, they can't like fake their crimes now. Now everybody's got cameras. Everybody can see what's going on. Other nations of non-white people are communicating and whatnot. So everybody knows who they are and what they about. Everybody knows. Be careful around the blue-eyed devil. Be careful. Be careful around them. Okay? Because they lie, they steal, they cheat. This is what they've all historically done. Right? They went into Africa, took slaves. Right? They went into the Middle East, fucked up their shit so that they can get all the oil, right? Genocided the Native Americans, went into fucking India, forced themselves on the Indians, caused famines, forced them to grow poppy, then took the poppy, went to China, pushed it on the Chinese. The Chinese fought 2 opium wars to try to get them the fuck up out of there, right? Then forced their way into fucking Japan. Then Japan mobilized and recognized like, oh shit, like we're behind, right? And then they thought like, okay, well, we're going to try to do like what the European does because we're on this little island too, just like the UK, and we need resources, right? So Japan is like the Europe of fucking Asia. So like, oh, we need these resources. So then they got to go. Then they go. And once they got the technology with the Meiji Restoration, then they went and they invaded China and did the whole Nanking massacre, invaded South Korea and all that shit, right? Japanese are the white people of Asia, if anybody doesn't know. You know what I mean? But now that China has caught up, Japan's scared. Because they're like, remember like that thing that happened like back during World War II? We're kind of sorry about that. You're not mad, are you still? Huh? So Japan's scared. Okay? That's why they're trying to be all buddy-buddy with the United States. Because they know what's coming. But this is what these folks have done. Stealing countries. Do you got to go and watch any Johnny Harris video? Right? Stole Hawaii. Right? The Banana Republic. Right? Then you got what's going on with France. And France, talking about how integral, their relationship with Africa is. France can't survive without Africa. That's France's fault. That's France's issue. You see? And that's why you think you have all these assassination attempts on Ibrahim, Traore. Is that how you say his name? Of Burkina Faso, right? And you have Niger and Mali, trying to come together and form Voltron, right? All the francophone countries that are being exploited with billions, if not trillions of dollars flowing back to Europe. These again, Europe has a parasitic relationship with the rest of the world. They want to talk about, our birth rates are going down. Why shouldn't European birth rates go down? If the only reason European birth rates are up is because of the parasitic relationship that they have with the rest of the world. They have built and developed nothing on their own. I would love to see white people go off and develop white conda and somehow come up with a fission reactor, or where they can generate energy on their own and they don't have to go out into the rest of the world and fuck with anybody else. This is why the whole concept of going to a different planet, and we're gonna go to Mars and all this other shit. This is why this shit is goofy. Because I'm like Europeans haven't even built anything sustainable within their predominantly white countries. Again, going back to the whole idea that white people have been persecuted when they started off on one continent and now they're on 6. They started off in tech again. Freaking, I know Europe is a part of Asia, but I'm saying if we want to consider Europe a continent, I'm saying that's their place of origin. To sit there and cry, and I mean the amount of irritants that I get from listening to white Australians talk about how Australia is a white country. Like the level of delusion that you have to even fucking remotely even say something like that. Europeans started off in Europe and now they're all over North America. They're in Latin America. They're in Africa, right? They're in Asia because freaking Slavic Russia expanded all the way out to Siberia. Those people aren't fucking European out there, by Yakuts and shit like that. They're Asian. They're Asian. They're Asian looking people. Okay, all the people of the Asian steppe, all those places, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and all that shit, that's because of Russian expansion, that's a part of Russia. Right? And then you got, what other places? Australia, that they went in there and just invaded and took, right? So it's like how to sit there and create the even to be able to utter the sentence that and notice this, you're on 6 continents, and yet your population is still declining. That's crazy. That's crazy work. So you've expanded. I mean, just to show how much they have, just taken other people's lands. You've expanded and taken other people's lands, and your population is still in decline. How does that work? Even in the poorest, even in the poorest conditions in the West, right? Westerners still have more than many of the other people around the world. They still have more. They still live in more comfort, right, than the rest of the world. Even as much as they struggle, still have more comfort, right, in this system of capitalism, right? It's not like they're getting up every morning and, going out there and, freaking making bricks in the sun and, using the freaking little wood rack and putting straw in it so that they can make bricks and getting paid, 3 cents a day or some stupid shit. You got how many? What percentage of the world is making less than $2 a day? Let me see if I can find this. Let's see. What percentage of the world makes less than $2 a day? I should say like $5 a day. Hell, $10 a day, $20 a day. People talking about, I need to make $15 an hour. So we got $2 a day. 2025 purchasing power is 8 to 10% of the world. Let's go with $5. Let's see what that is. Damn. Roughly 40 to 50% of the world's population lives in less than $5 per day, depending on the exact poverty used. Okay, what percentage of the world makes $10 a day? 65 to 70% of the world, roughly 65 to 70% of the world lives below that level. A widely cited Pew Research estimates put it at about 71% globally. 71% of the fucking world lives off of less than 10 US dollars a day. 10 US dollars a day. Right? This is a byproduct of fucking European colonialism. This is why European nations are more developed than the entire rest of the fucking world. Because they're extracting energy, life force, resources, minerals, and funneling it back to Western capitalist nations. Nearly half of the world lives on less than about $8.30 a day. Every time I get a book sale, I'm making more than freaking $8.30 on, I think Understanding White Supremacy. I make more than $8.30. I think I do. It's somewhere in there. It's definitely above $8. So I'm making more money. And then the thing is how many people in the, so basically half the world can't even afford my book. Half the world can't even afford my book off of one day's worth of work. They would have to sacrifice freaking, and again, what is 1 day's of work? Is it 10-hour day? Is it 8-hour day? Is it a 14-hour day? But I'm saying, let's just go with a day is 24 hours. So in order to buy my book, half the world would have to spend one whole day working in order to buy the paperback version of Understanding White Supremacy. Just let that marinate for a second, because I'm letting that marinate for a second. Pathological. Absolutely fucking pathological. And this is okay. They think this is okay. They think this is perfectly okay. That there's nothing wrong with this. Not even tapping into the capacity of the entire planet. It's like when you see the people that are like, oh, the human brain only uses less than 10% of its of the actual brain, right? Even though like the neurons are just kind of like, sitting in like a fat jelly, right? Like your actual brain is not all neurons. But I'm just saying, like, when people say that in movies, like that movie Lucy and shit like that, when they're talking about, oh, the percentage of the brain that you're not using and the full capacity, it's like you're not even using the full capacity of the fucking planet. There's probably some kid in a village somewhere that's not getting proper nutrition that, can do like Einstein level of math in his head or Sir Isaac Newton level math in their head. It's like them Chinese kids that you see with the damn what do you call that damn thing? What's that called? With the cube. What is that shit called? Why is my brain saying Roblox? That's not what it's called. It's called what type of cube is it? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Them damn cubes. I saw a black guy the other day. He does shit with one hand. He be like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I understand it's an algorithm. You know what I mean? Like, it's like if you want a block to move this way, it's like up, down, left, right, or some shit like that. Right? I get it, but my brain I can't wrap my head around that. What are a Rubik's Cube? There you go. Damn, I'm not having a damn brain fart. You know what I mean? They be banging them Rubik's Cubes out. Doing calculation. Y'all seen them videos on Instagram and shit, them little Asian kids. They'll have like a whole bunch of numbers and they'll be sitting there stimming with their hands, flapping their hands around, doing all these fucking calculations in their head. If somebody can do that and then people are like, oh my God, you can't build pyramids without computers. I'm like, all I need is that motherfucker right there. That's all I need. I don't need a computer. Okay, he's like the human calculators in the movie Dune. The motherfucker just roll his eyes up in his head and shit like that, and be like, that's actually 3.7 degrees to the right, sir." I'm like, "Thank you." Okay, 3.7 degrees to the right. Move that shit over there. Yep, like that's all you got. That's all you need. All you need is one of them. You know what I mean? You don't need a computer. You know, we are computers, bitch. You know, shit. But anyway, jokes aside, I'm just saying, like it just the way that white people like the way that they just like engage in Christianity, like, oh my God, we're such good people. I'm like, really? Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? Like we're such good people. I'm like, how do you see? How does it see? Like black people. What I hate about being FBA is like black people's history. As FBAs, even in Africa, because Europeans came in there and destroyed our history. Oh, it's just slavery and that's it. Right? We've just been oppressed and that's it. Right? But like with white people, when they go and they look at their history, right? It's like your history is well documented, all the atrocities that you did. How do you just leap over all of that? How do you just leap over all of the genocide, the murder, the rape, the pillage? How do you just leap over that and then skip right to Jesus and act like, oh, in the light of Christ and Jesus, and then fucking Sean Ryan? You know what I mean? I'm like, nigga, you literally were the spear tip of the U.S. military industrial complex, which has done no good around the world. You've destabilized regions. You got Muslims running around, beheading people, the ISIS and shit like that, who were not in power, right? Running around screaming Allahu Akbar and all this other shit, because they got their own power conflicts and dynamics going on over there. But you go in, you destabilize the regions to allow the evil people within that region to come to power, right? And then you run around, oh, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian. I'm a warrior. I'm a warrior. You're a warrior for as the Muslims would say, the great shaitan. You're a warrior for the great shaitan. But yet you're running around talking about Christ and Christendom and whatnot. Or you try to create this sort of the West versus the East, because you always got to have a boogeyman, and so it's the Christians versus the Mohammedans, right? Like like that's your argument. So then they go into that what do you call that shit, the Deus Ex or fucking the sort of crusades bullshit that they run around with. It's very, very cringe. It's so cringe. It's so cringe. Like I swear, like I feel like I'm more Christian than Christians. Because like when I actually think about actually being righteous and just, is one of the things I can't stand about all these hippo Christ. Because if I was actually gonna be a Christian, I would actually be trying to follow the fucking word and try to follow the shit. But with white people, like, they use Christianity as like like a fucking insurance policy. I'm getting interrupted. I gotta get ready to go. But it's just, I don't know, man. Just the way that they think about Christianity in this sort of, crusade fashion, and then sit there and they look at Christianity in a completely different way. They look at Christianity as it feels like it's in like an insurance policy, or it gives them comfort, to try to mask their atrocities. It's not. They don't look at Christianity. I'm talking about white people right now. They don't look at Christianity through the actual teachings of Christ. They don't. They look at Christianity as a way to justify, to make Christianity first,
to make Christianity the one and only religion, and then argue that everybody who's not Christian is deserving of their crimes against humanity because they're not Christian. So therefore, I don't have to feel bad because I'm a warrior of Christ. I'm a warrior. I'm a warrior. I'm a warrior of Christ. And so therefore, I get to commit these crimes against these other people because they're not Christian. And then, and again, you know, then, and while I'm committing these crimes against humanity because they're not Christian, I mean, the gold is just sitting there. I mean, I might as well take it, right? I might as well take it and bring it into the kingdom of Christ, right? It's just sitting there. Why just leave it there? You know, that's what these people are on. It's just the way that white people should not be the torchbearers of Christianity. They just shouldn't. And you know what the irony is? You know what the irony is? If you want to say, talk about God and God's ultimate divine plan. You know who the face of Christianity is going to be in the next 100 years? It's not the European, because their population is in decline. The face of Christianity is going to be African. It's going to be African. That's what it's going to be. Because the African Christians are the fastest growing Christian population in the world. That's the irony of the shit. I guess I shouldn't get too excited, right? For the people who believe, the universe operates in mysterious ways and it will always come back and bring itself back into alignment of justice. Even though I don't really subscribe to that shit, but I'm just kind of like, all the shit that white people have done and their population is in decline. And they think that they're like the torchbearers of Christianity, and now, their populations are dwindling. I'm like, well, it seems pretty fitting to me. Anyway, I'm done with this video. That's my video. SWP out. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.
On the scene, diamond blingy, whole screen. Checkerboard, Louis V. I'm so fresh and simple and clean. Stuff them bands in my jeans, slap them 30s in them things. Pull the trigger, let it sing. Then go smoke a Russian cream.
Boo, hold on.
Yeah.
Hello?
We ain't.
Where we at? Oh, you want to know where I'm at? We outside!